Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad that you've joined us today. I'm Allison Scaver, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a special needs planning firm serving the greater Texas area. We're excited to be here today, and we are excited to have our special guest here with us today, Andy Hardwick from the Social Security Administration. And today he's going to be talking to us about working and maintaining Social Security benefits. This is a topic as a special needs planner. We spend hours and hours and hours talking about SSI, Social Security, also known as SSDI. And Andy Hardwick, he's a little bit of a legend around here. You may have heard from him before, but if not, he's a name that you're going to want to remember because he is just a wealth of knowledge, of information that we all need as parents with special needs kids, and how we go about working with and moving through benefits from SSI or SSDI in some cases. But today we're learning about how we can work and continue to maintain these benefits. And I hope that this is a valuable presentation to you. Consolidated Planning Group was born, a long time ago, but we offer holistic planning for special needs families. I'm a mom. I'm a mom to four, two with special needs, and I have kids that are younger than 18 and children that have transitioned and kind of crossed over and turned 18 and kind of have managed benefits and how we go about doing this. And I do this for a living, and I would say it's tough. It's hard, and it's just when you think you've got all the knowledge and the answers, then there's some more rules that you didn't understand. So I'm glad you're here. I hope that you take away a lot from this, and if we can be of assistance to you going forward, we would certainly like to. Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you. All of the lines are muted, and I have some questions that have been emailed to me prior to this presentation, which I will make sure that we communicate. And then also, if you have additional questions, what I would like you to do is put those in the chat box, and then we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So thanks so much. And Andy, take it away.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here today, and thank you, Allison, for inviting me out. My name is Andy Hardwick. I am a public affairs specialist for Social Security. So my specialty is doing these workshops on the different programs that we administer. If you have any questions today that are not answered during or at the end of the presentation, you'll see my email, or Allison will share my email with you. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. So.
Andy, we can't hear you. Your line is muted. Can you unmute your line? Okay, bear with us 1 second. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty.
How about now?
Okay, yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
That is perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So my name is Andy Hardwick. I'm public affairs specialist for Social Security, and what I generally do is do workshops on these on the programs that we administer. Okay, so looking at this slide, work incentives. Work incentives is a fancy name for work supports. So what we're doing is we're trying to see how many people that are on disability programs can go back to work or start work, and maybe eventually come to a point where they don't even need Social Security or SSI until they get older. Now, that's not going to be possible for everybody. We recognize that. So if your child is in a category where maybe they can't ever work full time and make a salary up to what somebody else does, that's okay. They can still stay in our program, still have the medical coverage. What the work incentive program does is it covers them initially to see if they can become completely independent. And if they can't, they can continue working, but still have the benefits. But if they can become completely independent, maybe hopefully someday they'll just get off the programs and not need this kind of assistance. So it works either way, but they're here to help folks to get their feet wet in the work program and see how independent they can become. A lot of times parents are fearful when their kids are in the transitional program because they've heard that the children are going to be, you know, or not children anymore, young adults are going to be out working someplace, and they're scared because they say, well, maybe they just got their child on SSI and now already they're saying now the school is pushing for them to work. Aren't they going to lose their benefits? We're going to talk about that today. That's what the whole work incentive program is about. So Allison, if you could move the slide ahead. All right, so we're going to talk about first the basics, what disability programs we have, how Social Security defines disability, and what do we mean when we say substantial gainful activity, SGA. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's talk about how we define disability. Disability is the inability to engage in any substantial gainful activity. What does that mean? It means you can't, for 2020, the SGA or substantial gainful activity amount is $1,260 gross, okay? So what that means is in order for Social Security to consider you, your child, whoever's filing, disabled, they have to be, if they're 18 or above, they have to be unable to earn at least $1,260 gross per month, okay? So if when they're applying, they're still working or working part-time and their gross earnings are over $1,260 a month, that claim will be denied immediately. We won't even consider that claim because we will say that person is engaging in substantial gainful activity. Therefore, we cannot even consider whether he or she is disabled. Okay, so before a person applies for SSI or SSDI, they have to be, if they're working, their gross earnings for the month have to be less than $1,260. They have to have a condition that has lasted or is expected to last at least 12 months. Okay, so if it's just something temporary as a result of an accident and the duration is going to be less than a year, that claim will be denied. All right. Now, if this is a person under 18 years old, then we don't consider whether or not they can work or not. What we look at is we compare the child to other children of similar age in the community. And can this child feed themselves, clothe themselves? Do they understand something that their parents tell them? Can they use the bathroom? Things like that. So we will be looking at that. What we use to determine whether or not a person is disabled is something called Disability Evaluation under Social Security, long title. All you need to remember is the nickname Blue Book. If you go to ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov, type in Blue Book, you will see that book online, and you'll see what criteria we'll be looking at to determine whether or not a person is disabled. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. So if a person is earning a certain amount of money, okay, but they have to spend some of those wages they earn in order to work. Like, let's say they need transportation to their place of work because there's no other way to get there, okay, except by taxi, let's say, or Uber. Well, if they come to us and say, I need to spend this amount of money every month on transportation services because there's no other way for me to get to my job, we can take that those expenses. Okay, let's say your child earns $1,500 a month, all right? But $500 of that $1,500 gross is for transportation, for Uber, okay? If we approve that, then the $500 that they're making from the company where they work, that wouldn't be counted. We'd only say they're making $1,000, which would be a factor if they're getting Social Security disability. Not necessarily, not so much, well, with SSI also, but more in the Social Security, because if in Social Security, if you make over a certain amount of money after a certain time, you could be cut off. But out of the $1,500 that the child earns, $500 is for that special expense for transportation. That wouldn't be counted. So we would say that the person is only earning $1,000 a month because the other $500 is being used for transportation. In this example here, the person is earning $1,200 gross a month, and but their medications are $75 a month. The cost of the medication is subtracted from the $1,200 gross, so our records show that this person is earning $1,125 per month. Okay, so there's other impairment-related work expenses. In other words, they're expenses that you have or the person that's disabled has in order to help them work. So if you come to us and you show us what these expenses are, we can, and if we approve it, then that means we're not going to count the portion of the wages that the person makes for Social Security purposes. And here it is. Here you see transportation costs, attendant care, service animals, medical devices, prosthesis, residential modifications, and other items and services. So there's a whole bunch of things that under this IRWE, which means impairment-related work expenses. So please, if your child is working and has any of those, let us know. So that would mean that we're counting less of their money, and that means they could stay on our programs for a longer period of time. Now, if the young person is working, we ask them to, or the person that's representing them. I know that in a lot of cases where a young person has a disability, they're not able to get direct payment. They get payment through what we call a representative payee, which means that this is someone, it's almost like power of attorney for Social Security purposes. So if your child doesn't get benefits directly in their name, but you are their representative payee, then it's your responsibility to fill this form out, SSA 821. This is the work activity report, okay? And this is going to ask a lot of questions about the work. And this will help us then determine more accurately what is the payment amount that the person should get from SSI or SSDI now that they're working. And again, that impairment-related work expense is only one of the things that we can use to count less of a person's wages. There are other conditions also, right? So let's go to the next slide. But just make sure that you do report. You can fill out this 821 online or by phone, okay, or send it in the mail, because right now Social Security offices are still closed, all right? So don't try to come in. We're not going to let you in. Most of us are working from home, and the box, the drop-off box is not, the public doesn't have access to it, so you can't drop anything off. So you either have to mail it or call in and tell. Now, if you do call in, make sure you write down the day you called in, the name of the person you talked to. So if for some reason that information didn't get on our computers and we didn't, do what we were supposed to, if you get hit with an overpayment later, you can say, well, wait a minute, I called on such and such a day, spoke with this person, and I gave them that whole report. Okay. Now, this is going to talk about the SSI employment support, but there's one thing I want to mention that goes for SSI and SSDI. Okay, it's called subsidy. Let's say your child is working at a warehouse, and there's quite a few young people there, and the standard pay is $1,500 gross a month, okay? Your child gets paid that money, but because of their disability, their level of work is not up to par with the other kids that don't have disabilities. But the owner of the factory knows you, he knows your child is a hardworking child, so he doesn't, he says, well, I want to pay this person just like everybody else, okay? If you, as a parent, if you know that that situation is going on, and even though your child is earning $1,500, really the level of work they're doing is not enough to earn that amount of money, you can contact us and say, well, I don't think that what they're being paid is really the worth of what their work is. So we'll contact the employer and we ask them, what is the real value of the work? Well, I think $1,000. The extra 500 is because that's what I'm paying everybody else. I don't want them to feel bad, and they are hard workers, but they have limitations due to their disability. Well, that $500 extra that they get paid, so they get paid like everybody else, is called a subsidy, meaning that they're getting paid more than what their work is worth. So whatever they're being paid in excess of the worth of their earning of their work, that would be counted as a subsidy. And that's what we would subtract from their gross earnings, and we wouldn't count that. So instead of counting $1,500 a month gross, we would say, well, they're making $1,500, but $500 is subsidy. So we're only counting $1,000. Okay, so it's another one. All right, so we have also with the SSI program, we have different kind of exclusions. The SSI, remember, SSI is the program that your child usually gets on at age 18 or later, okay? If they have no work history, they usually get on the SSI program. The SSI checks come on the first of the month, and they give you Medicaid, all right? Not Medicare, Medicaid, all right? So one of the things that we have under the SSI program is called the Student Earned Income Exclusion, all right? If your child is under 22 and in school full-time, oops, go back. Allison, go back. No, you went back too far. Oh, what happened to this? Well, anyway, with this student earned income exclusion, all right, you can actually exclude, we can actually exclude up to $1,900 of their gross wages per month, all right? Now, the maximum is about 7640, something like that, for the year. So once they reach that amount, then we can't, then we start counting their wages using another formula. But up to that amount, 7,000 plus, we don't count their wages. If they're in school full-time and they're under 22 years old. Once they reach 22, then there's this earned income exclusion, meaning we don't count the first $65 of their gross wages, and then we don't count one half of the remainder. So let me give you an example. Let's say your child is earning $965. Well, let's say their only income is their SSI and their wages, no other income. So in that case, not only do we exclude the first, and let's say their wages are $985 gross per month. So we not only exclude the first $65 of that $985, but since they have no other income except for the SSI, we add on another $20 that we don't count. So we don't count $85 of that $985. Okay, that leaves $900. We divide the remainder, 900 by 2. That leaves $450. That's what we're going to count against your child's SSI check. So if their check is $783, we will subtract $450 from that out of the original $985 that your child is earning. And that's what we're going to, whatever the remainder is, that's what they're going to get in SSI benefits. Okay. So again, if there's not a subsidy, if there's not any impairment related work expenses, we're going to take their gross income and we're going to count we're going to take away $65, but if there's not any other income except the SSI and the wages, we're going to take away another 20, which means we're going to subtract the $85 from the 985. That leaves 900. We're going to divide that by 2. That leaves 450, and that's what we're going to count against your child's SSI. Okay, next slide.
Andy, are you seeing the student earned income exclusion slide? Andy, can you hear me okay? Andy, can you hear me okay? Andy, we can't hear you. If anybody can hear me, can you guys please indicate we're not hearing Andy at all? Okay, Andy, we're not hearing you. They can hear me, but we're not hearing you. Oh my, okay. Let's see here.
Now can you hear me?
We can. Sorry, you went away. You went away. We couldn't hear you at all. We were having.
Let's go back. We need to go back a couple of slides.
Okay, so let's see here.
Back to the students. Let's go back to the students.
Okay, let me see if I can make that happen.
I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. Bear with me 1 second, okay? Which one, like the student exclusion?
The student earned income exclusion.
Okay.
It's about 2 or 3 slides back.
Okay.
Keep going.
There.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, all right, this is the one that I was talking about when I think maybe I got cut off. But if your child is under 22, in school full-time, they can earn up to $1,900 gross per month, and we're not going to count it at all. We're not going to reduce their SSI at all until they reach for the year 7,670. After that, we use another formula to find out how much of their earned income, how much of their wages we're going to count. Now, in order for us to apply this, not only does your child have to be under 22, but they have to be in school full-time. What does that mean? If they're in college or university, 8 hours per week, grades 7 to 12, at least 12 hours a week, or in a training course to prepare for employment, 12 hours a week, or homeschooled, at least 12 hours a week. Okay, so they have to be a full-time student, and they have to be under age 22. Okay, next slide. Okay. All right. These are special payments for individuals who work. So you can be working at the SGA level, which for SSI purposes, this substantial gainful activity would be $1,260 a month. You could be earning over that and still get your SSI. Not a whole lot of SSI, but you would still remember, if that was your only income, those wages and the SSI check, we would subtract $85 from that amount, and then divide by 2, and then that's what would be counted against the SSI. So whatever the remainder was would be subtracted from the 783, the SSI amount, and the max SSI amount, and then you would get the remainder. Okay, next slide. This is 1619B. You could actually, under the SSI program, your child could actually be making over $30,000 a year and still be on SSI. You say, well, how is that possible? Because even applying the exclusion for wages, it probably wouldn't be enough for them to get any money from SSI. Okay, because they would be making too much. Their gross wages for the month would be too high. But we keep them on Medicaid. Okay, if you indicate to us, or if your child is getting direct payment, the young person indicates to us that they still need the Medicaid for health insurance purposes, that whatever they have at work is not going to cover them, or from their parents, they can stay on the SSI program. And then let's say, by the same token, this young person comes to us the next month and says, hey, guess what? I just got laid off from my job. We start the SSI checks back up again, okay? Because this person is technically on SSI still. It's just that their earnings are too high, but we're still keeping them on the Medicaid, which, by the way, if your child is on SSI and later comes on SSDI, under a parent, where the SSDI amount is too high for them to continue getting the SSI, we can still keep them on Medicaid, as long as you tell us that you're going to keep the SSI rules for them. All those rules that you can't have this, you can't have that. You're going to make believe they're still on SSI, because technically they are, and we'll keep them on Medicaid, even though maybe their SSDI amount might be $1,000 a month or more. We can still keep them on Medicaid, and also after 2 years of being on SSDI, they will get Medicare. Okay. So anyway, the 1619B refers to the SSI. That means that even though you may earn an amount of money that's too much for you to get SSI, even though you were on it previously, we will keep you on the Medicaid. And if for some reason your income goes down or whatever, the SSI check will start right back up again, because you're technically still on. Okay.
Andy, we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'd like to pose. So one, on the full-time student, that they can earn $1,900 a month.
Right.
If they're a full-time student, their monthly SSI check would be cut off, but they can earn that much and still get their Medicaid, is what you're saying.
Well, actually, if they're under 22 and a full-time student and working, we're not going to count the first $1,900 that they make in the month. Up to that 7,600, what was it, 7,640? I don't remember the figure for the year, but up to, so if your child is making $1,000 a month gross, that means for the first 7 or 7.5 months, we're not reducing the SSI check at all. We're not counting any of that money at all. Okay.
And what was the total amount up to 7,000? What was it?
It's on the slide, and I can't remember, since I don't have control. It's about 2 or 3 slides back. It's
okay.
7670. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Peggy. 7670.
And then so someone asked us, a child's investment income count.
What is a child investment income? I don't know what that is.
like if they have any, I guess mutual funds or, just income?
Well, if the child is over 18, whose money is it legally? If the child can go in and cash that in, then that's the child's money. If the child can't, but the parent just has that, well, in case the parent dies, the child will be the beneficiary, but only the parent can cancel, not the child, or not the young person. It's not going to be counted against them. Remember, though, until the child is 18, whatever the parents have is counted as though it were the child's. Once the child turns 18, if that child doesn't have access, same like the insurance policy, if the child is the beneficiary of an insurance policy, but they don't have the power to cancel it, well, then we're not going to count it.
Okay. And then also the investment income, if it's in the confines of a special needs trust, then that also wouldn't be counted.
Right.
Against you. Or if it was in the confines.
Now, the special needs trust, but remember, you can't use that money to pay for clothing or shelter of the child. You can use it for other purposes, but not for clothing or shelter. The other thing that we have is what we discussed last time is an ABLE account, ABLE, achieving a better life experience. With that one, you can have up to $100,000 in that account. But the contributions per year are limited to $15,000. But you have a lot more leeway with an ABLE account because you can use that for almost anything: clothes, food, shelter, trips for the child, things like that. There's a lot of leeway with that one. Whereas with the special needs trust, only for certain expenses.
And then we had one other question that was basically, what about going to school after age 22? How does that affect, or do you get a deduction? Is there
Well, then we apply the standard deduction, which would be, we don't count the first $65 of their gross income, or if their only income is the wages and SSI, then we don't count the first $85 of their gross monthly income. And then we divide by 2, whatever's left is subtracted from the SSI amount, and then that's what they get in SSI. All right.
Okay.
So now someone asked me a question: how do they go about it? How you go about filing? Go to SSA.gov or socialsecurity.gov, and then click on the disability icon on the home page, and there it'll tell you you'll be applying probably for both programs. But if your child doesn't have enough, if he's never worked, he or she has never worked, the Social Security disability claim is going to be denied, okay? Because you're applying for their own Social Security or SSI. But the SSI claim will still be in process. So if you're filing for both programs, don't be discouraged or confused and say, well, wait a minute. They told me that they could qualify possibly, and it would take about 3 months for a decision. And now I'm already getting a letter saying they're denied. It's probably referring to the Social Security disability program, which to get that, they have to have a certain number of work credits, or they have to be getting Social Security disability under a parent who is receiving benefits or who has passed away and had enough work credits. Otherwise, so look at that. The denial letter will say on there Social Security, not the SSI, because that's going to take about 3 months before you get a decision on the SSI claim.
And then we have this, if my child's in a training program and is not working, will they count the parent's income? And we do get that question a lot. The bottom line is if your child is under 18, it's based off of the parent's income. If your child is over 18, it's based off of the child's income, even if they're living in your house. So I don't know that the training program has any difference on that, or can you?
No, it does not. It's the age. Okay, so if there are children under 18 living in a non-parent household, then we don't count the income of the caregivers. So, in today's situation, sometimes parents pass away due to accident, illness, or God forbid, imprisonment or whatever, and the parents cannot care for the child, so the child is left with the grant. If there's no parent in the household or no step parent in the household, then the income of the caregiver, the non-parent caregiver, is not counted. Neither are the assets or resources of the caregiver. Okay.
Okay, next slide.
And the answer is yes, you can get a copy of this presentation without any problem.
Yes, and we'll send that out to everyone.
Okay, next slide. Okay, we already covered that, so let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, reinstating SSI eligibility without a new application. Basically, within, if the benefits are stopped for some reason, if the situation changes within 12 months, your child can get back on SSI without filing a new application. Okay, so it has to be within a year, within a year's period, within 12 months period of time. Then we can start the SSI back up again. But if it's over 12 months, they're going to have to sign, I'm sorry, they're going to have to start the application process all over again. So it depends, you know, depends on what. Now, somebody was asking a question about Medicaid. What are the Medicaid rules in a different state? You would have to contact in most states, if you are on SSI, if your child is on SSI, they are eligible for Medicaid. That's the way it works in most states. But you'll have to find out from the state what the rules are for the SSI recipients, how that works. But here in Texas and most states, it's if you're eligible for SSI, you're automatically eligible for Medicaid. However, the Medicaid is not portable. If your child is going on a visit to another state, that's fine. They can use the Texas Medicaid. But if they're going to move, the month after the move, they have to use the Medicaid from the new state where they're living. So as soon as you move or your child moves, you need to notify Social Security to get a referral for the Medicaid for the new state for the following month, because Texas is not going to cover it once you move for the month following the move. So make sure that wherever you go, that you let Social Security know that your child is moved, and we will send a referral to the new Medicaid office in that state where they live, so they can, you know, continue with the Medicaid. Medicare, though, is portable. If your child is getting SSDI, if the child is on Medicaid and then comes on SSDI under the parent, after 2 years of being on SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, they will get a Medicare card, a red, white, and blue card. So so that one, you can use that throughout the 50 states. That's no problem. You don't have to call about that one, the red, white, and blue Medicare card. But the Medicaid is particular to the state where you live.
Andy, could you just take a moment and speak about what is SSI and what is SSDI? Because so many times those terms are just thrown around synonymously, right, and they're not the same. So could you just explain the differences between the two?
Yes. Okay. We have two disability programs, SSI and SSDI. Actually, Social Security, okay, Social Security was started back in the 30s. It's for people who retire and their families, people who are disabled and their families, or workers who have passed away, all right? So the only way your child could get Social Security is if they start working after a certain number of years. They're going to have enough credits where they can get Social Security disability, okay? Or if they're never able to work at all, or their work is a minimal amount and they just don't have enough work credits, once you or your spouse passes away or starts getting Social Security, they can receive Social Security under you. That's called SSDI. If they're 18 or above, it's called SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. So it's only paid to those young people who have a work history or whose parents have passed away or are receiving Social Security. That child has to be at least 18 years old and they are getting SSDI. That check comes on a Wednesday, second, third, or fourth Wednesday, and that could be any amount. okay? SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income, not Social Security Income, Supplemental Security Income. It's an assistance program. A lot of questions asked about income and assets, how many people live in a house, how many cars do you own, how many homes, et cetera, because it is an assistance program. It doesn't come from Social Security. It has nothing to do with Social Security. So that one comes on the first of the month. That one gives you Medicaid. And that one, the maximum amount is usually $783, $783. All right. So the SSI comes on the first, gives you Medicaid, a lot of questions about income and assets. Social Security doesn't ask you about a lot of questions about income. They don't care about assets, period. And the only certain kind of income might affect Social Security, like workers' comp or if somebody got hurt on the job. But otherwise, the other income you have would not affect the Social Security. That check comes on a Wednesday, second, third, or fourth Wednesday of the month. And that one gives you Medicare after 2 years. So if you're on Social Security disability for 2 years, you come on Medicare, just like a senior. So your child could be 20 years old. They're on SSDI for 2 years. Now they're going to get Medicare just like grandma or grandpa. Okay. So the SSI gives you Medicaid. The SSDI gives you Medicare after 2 years.
We have a couple of questions about if you are denied, what do you need to do is the first question.
You have 60 days to appeal. You can do that online. You can do it by phone or online. Okay, that's called the reconsideration. That means somebody who did not initially look at the case, not the same person who denied the case, somebody else is going to look at the case and see if they can come up with a different decision. So that's called, you have 60 days to do that, either online or by phone.
And sometimes what I would say is you may be well suited to get an attorney on your side. We do have a list of attorneys that can help you with that. If your case is super complicated and convoluted, you may at least want to consult with one. So, but you definitely can do this on your own and appeal in writing. And you can read the long letter that they send you and follow the instructions in that letter. But if you feel like it needs to be versed with, a higher professional, you can run that route. But definitely don't let the 60 days go by. So then we have another one that says, basically that they received the letter about the work program. The child, the son is graduated and is receiving SSI, but how long do they have to join a program? They're concerned about COVID right now.
They don't have to, if they're on SSI, they don't have to join a work program. Okay. That's just an option for them if they want to. They don't have, so as long as COVID's around, don't worry about it. Okay. But come January, hopefully next year, then they could start looking into that. They're probably talking about what's called Ticket to Work. Ticket to Work is like a vocational program. They try to pair you up with somebody that can give you job training and possibly a job. And while you're under the ticket, they can't review your case to see if your disability has ceased or gotten better or anything like that, as long as you're under the ticket, because every 3, 5, or 7 years, we're going to be reviewing the case medically to see if there's been an improvement. And if there's been a vast improvement, they could decide now that your child doesn't meet the disability requirement and cut them off. But if the condition is the same or worse, then they'll just continue paying the benefits. But your child does not have to go on any work program right now. Okay, I understand your concern, and that's okay, and that's not gonna, the purpose of these programs is to see, not everybody has to go to work. It's just to see if you could go to work and possibly be more independent or completely independent, where you wouldn't need this anymore. There was a question that somebody put to me while I was talking here about that the 60 days have gone up. If the 60 days for the appeal have gone up, you have to start all over again. You have to make believe like that's it. You just have to start all over again. Okay. Now, if the first appeal gets denied, then it goes to a hearing. That takes about a year, literally. Okay, that's the one where it's to your advantage to have a lawyer. Okay, so even at the reconsideration, the first appeal, now what you can do though is you can ask to find out from the medical or a copy of why your child was denied. What did they find? What did see? The medical decisions are done by an agency of the state called DDS, Disability Determination Services, DDS. They get the evidence from your doctors, clinics, your child's schools, and all that kind of stuff. They are the ones that make the decision. So you can ask to see, I want to see a copy of the denial. I want to see what they looked at the record. What did they look at? What did they determine? Why did they determine that my child didn't meet the standards? Because, you know, a lot of times people are denied not because they don't meet the standards, but maybe the doctor you thought sent in the information, they did not. So DDS didn't get the information they were looking for. So once you file a disability claim, maybe about 3 weeks later, you're welcome to call Social Security and find out who in DDS, because here in Texas, they're located in Austin, who in DDS is handling your child's case. You could talk to that person and say, have you gotten all the information you're looking for? And they'll tell you, well, we still haven't gotten the information from Dr. So-and-so. Well, then you as a parent, and this is what a lawyer would do, okay? You as a parent can call the doctor up and say, I just called DDS and they told me they haven't gotten your information. When can you fax it over to them? So this is the same thing that an attorney is going to do, all right? So you might save yourself a little bit of money at that point. At the hearings, it probably pays to have an attorney. At the reconsideration, maybe yes, maybe not, but really the attorney is looking at that blue book and trying to find as much evidence as he or she can so that your child can meet those standards in that blue book, and which is something that you could do for yourself, but it's up to you. You're certainly free to look for attorney representation at any stage of your child's filing for benefits.
We have another question that says, so a child under 18 does not qualify for SSDI even if the parent is receiving benefits, and that is the exception. So you want to talk about that, Andy?
Okay. Until a child is 18, if the parent is receiving benefits, either retirement or disability, or if the parent has passed away and they had enough work credits before they passed to earn Social Security, then their child gets benefits under them by virtue of being under 18. We do not make a decision on the child's disability while they're under 18. We just pay them based on the fact that they are a minor, okay? Now, once they're gonna turn 18, if you want that child to continue receiving benefits, you have to contact us and let us know, hey, this child has a disability. So then what's going to happen is you're going to fill out the disability forms, and if that's approved, that child who's now 18 will be classified as a disabled adult child, and they will continue with the Social Security they were getting previously, and at 20 they'll come on Medicare.
Okay, so this next question is, it sometimes can be a little bit complicated. For a child over 25, when the parents retire, he or she only receives SSI or SSDI, not both, right?
Well, it depends on the amount. It depends on the amount of the SSDI. Okay, it depends on what they're going to get under their parent. If the SSDI is over 783, 793, okay, is over $803 a month, then their SSI will stop. But there's a rule in the SSI program that says if the only reason that a child 18 years old or older was cut off of SSI because of they became eligible for SSDI under their parent, they can still continue with the Medicaid. All right. So as long as they keep the SSI rules. So they'll still get the SSDI, but now the SSI, they won't get it anymore because of the amount of the SSDI, but they can still be on Medicaid. And the advantage to that is that after they come on Medicare, after being on SSDI for 2 years, the co-pays, the deductibles, and the premiums for for Medicare are going to be paid for by the state through Medicaid. So that's, that could be a money saver, because like for Medicare Part A, the first $1,400 something, you got to pay that out of your pocket. Then Medicare pays the next 60 days. The doctor benefit is $144.60 per month for the doc, and that pays 80% of the doctor visit. Well, Medicaid would pay the other 20%, and they would, that $144.60 would be paid for by the state every month. So that means that wouldn't be taken from your child's Social Security to pay for Medicare Part D. So there's they could be on both programs. They could, if they wanted to, or the parents could say, you know what, SSI and Medicaid, they were asking too many questions about assets, and there's too many rules. Once they come on Medicare, I just want my child on Medicare and Social Security. No more questions about assets or how much they pay toward the household income, how many cars they have or anything. And that's fine. They can just stay on SSDI, but then you're going to be responsible, or they're going to be responsible for the co-pays, deductibles, and the monthly premiums for the different Medicare programs.
Great. Thank you for answering these questions. I know that there's a lot. I think the more we hear, the more questions we have. It's just always so confusing. So you guys are not alone. So thanks for sending your questions.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, let me just mention two things. If you want to know more about that work incentive program, please go to ssa.gov, type in under search on the homepage, Red Book. That one tells you what programs we have for people on SSI, SSDI, or on both programs that want to go to work. That's the Red Book. The Blue Book is the one that tells you the criteria for determining a disability if a person is disabled. Then we have another book called Understanding SSI. It's about 100 pages long. It's excellent, an excellent resource book for parents that has all the rules and regulations of the SSI program. Understanding SSI, okay? So please look at that book also, refer to that book. And go to our website too. There's a lot of FAQs there where you can see if the question similar to yours has been asked, and you'll see an answer to those questions. And then if all else fails, send me an email, and I will try to, I'll try to help you out as best I can.
We're coming around the bend at 1 o'clock, and I know you want to get through your slides. Do you want to just carry on, and then we'll kind of get through the slides?
Okay.
And
All right.
to answer any questions at the end?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Is this the slide that you're on?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Well, that's the one I just got finished talking about before, but you can go to the next one. Oh, we've already done that one. Yeah, we just did. Go to the next one. I don't think, well, if we have anybody who has a child that's visually impaired, just know this, that there's exclusions for the special conditions for not counting wages if somebody who's blind goes to work. It's a little bit more generous than with other disabilities. So you need to read that and see what kind of programs there are for people with visual impairments. Okay, next one. All right, just notify us if your child goes to work, stops work, or gets a raise or something. Please let us know, because otherwise it may result in an overpayment, which means we'll have to cut the check in the future to recover the money that we have paid erroneously. Okay, next.
And Andy, there is a reporting system like on a website where you can put your hours in and changes. But to my understanding, it used to be that changes, like if you stopped working or something like that, those had to be reported in person. But since you guys are not meeting in person, it's true that you can report those by phone now?
Phone, fax, or mail.
Okay.
Phone, fax, or mail.
Perfect.
Or internet. That's the easiest way, but yeah.
Okay.
All right, next one.
Okay. I think that was a little bit what we were talking about right there.
Okay, this is the red book that I was talking about. Now, and online, you'll get the 2020 edition. Okay. Once we get back to the office, I'll be glad to send you a hard copy, but that's probably not going to be till the end of the year or early next year. So sorry, this is all we have is the online, but the online is the 2020. So it's all the information that we have in the hard copy. So there's no difference there. And Allison, I know somebody sent a message that they had to leave early, but if you contact Allison, she will share my email. And it's Andy, A-N-D-Y .Hardwick, Hardwick @ssa.gov. Andy.Hardwick @ssa.gov. And if you forget, contact Allison. She'll give you the information. I think that's the last slide.
Okay, well, I actually thought you had a lot more slides. You did. On your timing, I have got 12:59. So how's that? So let me kind of look at our chat box and see if we have some additional questions. So, okay, so we talked about the red book and we talked about the blue book. And the blue book, I just want to mention that again. The blue book is the impairment guide. So if you haven't applied and you're thinking of applying for SSI, you can check your child's impairment in the blue book. And the blue book is going to identify and tell you what Social Security is looking for in order to deem them disabled. So I think that the blue book is very, very much worth downloading, as well as the red book. And also, I would say one of the pieces of advice, if you haven't applied, I don't know where you kind of are in your plight with this, but if you haven't applied, I do recommend advising your primary care physician, the child's primary care physician, that you will be applying and that they will be seeking medical records and that kind of thing. So that way the physician is on board, because like Andy said, sometimes these physician offices are slow to go, or you don't really even understand what the process was or why you got denied, but it had everything to do with either your physician's office didn't get the request from Social Security, or they didn't process the request. So like I said, just getting them on board in the beginning, I think is definitely a really, really good idea. Okay, I have a question. If the kid moves to SSDI and Medicare 2 years later, do they have to stay under 2000?
Yeah, do they have to stay on under the 2000? If you want to keep the Medicaid. If you don't want to keep the Medicaid, no. If you just decide to stay with Medicare and SSDI, then you can forget about SSI, the Medicaid, everything. And no, then you can have whatever you want in the bank. They can own as many cars as they want, as many houses as they want, and everything. No. Then it's no problem. But otherwise, yes. So it depends on if you want to keep the Medicaid. Yes, they have to keep the SSI rules, which under 2,000 for a regular bank account, $100,000 for the ABLE account. So it has to be that. But if you just want to keep them, say, oh, they're on Medicare, that's good enough for me. I'll pay the co-pays, deductibles, and premiums, no problem. Then that's okay. Then you don't have to worry about all these rules and regulation with because remember, the SSI is a health program, so is Medicaid. So, but Medicare isn't. Medicaid is, but Medicare isn't. So if they have Medicaid, then they're subject to those rules. If they don't, just have the Medicare, no, they're not.
Okay, Andy, this is a question that definitely comes up every time. And with as many people that are on, I'm sure that there are some people that are getting 500 and something for the SSI. Right. So can you explain how rent and fair share and how they can get their benefit increased to $783 a month if they're getting 5 something?
Right. We have 2 living arrangements basically under SSI. Okay, until a child is 18 years old, if they're living in a parent's household, since we're counting the parental income, we start with the 783. That's the maximum amount of SSI, and we see how much of the parent's income we're going to count against that 783. So it may result in the child being ineligible. Now, once they turn 18, what the parents make doesn't count anymore. So how do we determine whether a child gets $500+ from SSI or $783 from SSI? And maybe there's 2 households living next to each other, and how come one kid gets 783 and the other one gets 500 something. Well, it's called, usually the SSI is determined by what's called living arrangements. Living arrangement means, do you live in your own household or live in another person's household? Living in your own household means living by yourself, or owning the house where you live, or having rental liability for the place where you live, okay? Now, in order for you, if you live with other people, okay, in order to determine what your SSI amount is, we have to look at the household expenses, which would be rent or mortgage, utilities, and food, add those up, divide those by the number of people in the house, and that's the person's share. So if I live in a 4-person household and the expenses for rent, utilities, and food are $2,000 a month, 2,000 divided by 4 is what? 500, right? If I got my math right, I hope so. Okay, so $500, that's the person's share. They have to be paying at least $500 a month toward the household expenses in order to be considered living in their own household and eligible for that 783 amount. Okay. Now, sometimes parents try to get around this because, let's say the child lives in a house, or the young adult lives in a house where the household expenses are $4,000 a month. Still 4 people in the house. Well, 4,000 divided by 4 is 1,000. Even if that child got the maximum amount of SSI of 783, they would not be able to pay the $1,000 share that they're supposed to pay. So because they can't pay their share, even though the expenses in that house are higher than in that other house, because the young person can't pay their share, they are classified as living in another person's household, and they're only eligible for the $500+ per month. So sometimes parents try to get around this and say, well, suppose I charge my son's fair share would be $1,000 a month, but let's say that if I were to charge them room and board, I would charge them $600 a month. And anybody else that lived there, I would the same thing for room and board. I would $600 a month. Well, if the parent signs a statement saying, this is a business-like arrangement, I'm treating my child as a boarder, $600 a month is what I'm taking, and this is what I would charge somebody else, then we could consider that the SSI person is living in their own household independently. So then we could give them the 783. Even though they weren't paying their share, they were paying the 600 as a boarder. Now, the only downside of that is if you say that, IRS is going to make you take that $600 a month, which is what, a little bit over $6,000 a year. I guess like 7,200, something like that. They're gonna make you declare that income as income to you. You have to report it on your tax returns. If your child is paying their share, that money is not counted as income because your child is still a member of your household. But if you say that that child is a boarder, you now say that they're technically not living in your household. They're a boarder. So that makes them living in an independent household. And then that $600 a month, you have to count as your income. Okay, so that's the only downside of that. Am I still on here?
Yep, you're here. We can.
No, you're just silent, so I didn't know. Okay, all right.
No, I think that the fair share, and whether a parent is taking it off on the taxes and getting your payment increased to the 783 a month from the 500 is a very, very common question. We get that weekly. So I'm glad that you took the time to share that. Can you talk to us about a compassionate allowance and what that?
Yeah. Okay. There are over 200 different conditions that Social Security recognizes as being so serious that they warrant an approval. Usually it takes 3 to 4 months to get a decision by DDS, Disability Determination Services, as to whether or not a person is disabled. But if they have one of these 200+ conditions, then we could, as soon as the medical evidence is received, that case would be approved medically. Okay, so you need to go to ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov and type in under search compassionate allowance, and you'll see the over 200 different conditions. That's, for instance, Down syndrome. That would be considered, that would be qualify for a compassionate allowance. So if you have medical evidence that the child has Down syndrome, then that's an automatic approval. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of other things. We're always adding on new kind of thing. So if your child doesn't have one of those 200 plus conditions, we're still going to decide whether or not they're disabled, but it's going to take a much longer period of time. Okay. Now, we also have under the SSI programs called Presumptive Disability, similar to compassionate allowance. It's 15 different conditions under which, while we're waiting for DDS to make a medical decision, which could take 3 to 4 months or maybe longer, we could pay your child conditionally and give them Medicaid. And if the case is decided against them, they don't have to pay that money back if they have one of the 15 different conditions. And I only remember, like, it's for preemie babies under a certain weight, AIDS in certain cases, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and some, I believe it's like amputation above the knee in both legs. So other things, and some other, ALS also. So they would qualify, ALS qualifies for compassionate allowance and for presumptive disability. So God forbid a person have that, then they could get a medical approval in probably less than 30 days. If we had the medical evidence, if we got a letter from the doctor verifying that, then DDS could approve the case in less than 30 days.
I know that we were predominantly talking about working with SSI, but we do have some questions that were emailed for working with SSDI. I'd like to pose those. But one question that we did have is how much, so we do have a lot of families that have children that are clearly disabled, but because the child is not 18, as Andy mentioned earlier, it's based off of your income, not the child's income. So, and as a reminder, Andy, you mentioned this earlier, if they're a married couple, they can have $3,000 of assets. If they're single, $2,000 of assets, one car and one house. So if you have more than one car, more than one house, or more than that money, and your child is under 18, they're not going to qualify for SSI for the most part. Until they turn 18 and things change.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we will not even consider it, because we will consider the non-medical factors make them ineligible. So yeah, you're perfectly right.
And then furthermore, they wouldn't qualify for SSDI or Social Security Disability, which is confusing because your child is severely disabled. They would not qualify for that because they don't have enough work credits unless the parent is already retired through Social Security, are drawing Social Security disability benefits themselves, and then they may qualify that way. So I wanted to reiterate that, because again, we throw these terms around and a lot of it's easy to get them confused. So we have a person that said that their son is already receiving $1,300 a month on SSDI.
Yeah.
And Medicaid is paying for the Medicare Part B premium. How much more work income can he get without affecting his benefit?
Well, okay. If they're on SSDI, they get what's called a trial work period, meaning they have 9 months in which they can make as much money as they want. Okay. But if after that, after they use up their 9 months, and they don't have to be 1 month after another. So to count as one of the 9 months, their gross earnings have to be over $910 a month. Okay. So if they've had 9 months where they made over $910 gross per month, they've used up their 9 month trial work period. Okay. Then if the 10th month or any month thereafter, once they make over 1,260, their checks stop. Okay, but if 1,260 gross per month, but if they make less than that, if let's say then their earnings go below that, then we may be able to start up their checks again. That's under the SSDI program. That's
Okay.
called a trial work period.
So,
Okay.
so after the trial, so the first 9 months, if I can just clarify, the first 9 months they can make in the trial work period, or however the 9 months roll out, they can make as much as they want and their check would not be reduced. But after that, they could make up to $1,260 a month outside of their SSDI. So as long as they make less than $1,260, they would keep their SSDI check and keep their paycheck.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And in the example that you used of a college student earlier, that the college student could make
that only applied to SSI, not SSDI.
Right. So on the SSI, on the $1,900 a month that they're still going to be counted against them for income. So if they have more than $2,000 in their account, even though they can make up to $1,900 a month while going to school full time, if they have more than $2,000 in their account, then they would fall off of SSI. Is that correct?
Yeah, because that would be excess resources. Yeah, they have to make sure that what they could do is open an ABLE account and put that money in there. So they could have the regular bank account can have up to 2,000, but the ABLE account can have up to 100,000.
And the special needs trust can have an unlimited amount of money.
Right. That's right.
So someone says, what if there is no mortgage when we're doing our fair share, and that's actually favorable?
That's better. That's better because then you're okay. Let's say that $4,000 a month house where they had it was $2,000 a month for mortgage. Now the house gets paid off. Well, now the expenses go down from $4,000 a month to $2,000 a month, because the mortgage is no longer an expense. So since it's $2,000 a month, we divide that by 4, and now the person's share is $500. Well, they're only getting $500 something from SSI. Now they can take that $500, pay toward the household expenses, because now they can pay their share, and then their check goes up to $783 a month.
Yeah, for sure. So we have confusion on the, I don't understand the 1,260 versus the 910. So.
Okay, all right. The trial work period, the person who gets SSDI gets a 9-month trial work period. During those 9 months, anytime they make over $910 for the month, okay, then that counts as one of those months of the trial work period. Okay, so whether I make $5,000 in the month or $911 in a month, if it's over 910, it's going to count as one of those months in the 9-month trial work period. But during that 9-month trial work, I could be making $5,000 a month and it's not counted. I'm still getting my SSDI. If at the end of once I use up the 9 months, if my earnings go over 1,260, then I am engaging in substantial gainful activity, and then my check, the cessation month would be the first month that I go over 1,260, and I'm entitled to 2 more months, and then that's it. Then the check stops, unless something happens and there's so much. It's called the extended period of eligibility. So after your trial work ends, you have 36 months where if your earnings, as long as your earnings are below 1,260 gross, you can get checks. If they go over, then we're going to stop your check. But if you have to stop work again because your condition gets worse, we can start you back up again.
And if you have a child that is if you have a child that is approved under the adult disabled child, so they're SSI, SSDI, and then somewhere along the way, the child works or is doing okay enough that they've outworked and they don't qualify for benefits anymore, they fall off the system. If they were previously approved under adult disabled child prior to age 22 and they reapply in the future because they do have a permanent disability, does that still stick under the parent's record, or does that go away?
Well, they're originally cut off because of their work history. Probably they're going to say that since they were able to engage in substantial gainful activity, it depends on how long a period of time they worked when they were cut off. If they just worked for a little period of time, a month or two or something like that, then they can say, well, that was they could call it unsuccessful work attempt. It depends on the amount of the wages and how long they worked. And then DDS would have to decide, well, they went to work, but really not for that long. So it was an unsuccessful work attempt. And we can go back to before age 22, they're not able to work. So again, it depends on when they went back to work at above that 1260 level, how long they were able to keep that up, whether DDS decides, well, we can establish a disability like we did before age 22, or no, now they've demonstrated that after age 22 they were able to hold down a job for, I don't know, X amount of months, and they were, they were eligible. So now we have to come up with a new decision. So if they get cut off to SSDI and DDS says, well, we can't go back to before 22, then what the person would simply do is apply for SSI all over again. Or maybe it's their first time, I don't know, but they would apply for SSI. And then the SSI, the onset date for the SSI would be the actual month they're applying. It could be before, but up to the month they're applying. So they could say, well, yeah, I used to get SSDI, but I was cut off because I went to work for a year, but now I got sick again. So what they're going to do is going to apply for SSI, and chances are that they may be approved again. But DDS will be looking at their condition now since they stopped working. Why did they stop working now? And if they meet the standards in the Blue Book, then they'll come on SSI, and what's going to happen, eventually they'll come on SSDI, but not under their parent anymore. They'll come under their own, because as they work, they're going to be accumulating work credits. So they'll get to a point where Social Security will contact them and say, hey, now you qualify for SSDI in addition to the SSI. But that's where they get their own, because they've worked and they've gotten enough work to qualify for their own Social Security, which for a person under 24 years old is just basically 6 credits, a year and a half of work. So they could be working in a fast food place, and after about 2 years, they get a letter from Social Security saying, you have enough credits now, you can get your own Social Security. Now, if they get their own Social Security, in addition to the SSI, and later their parent comes on Social Security or passes away, chances are that we're going to say, well, we know you're getting your own Social Security, but you can get more under your parent who passed away, or under your parent who's now collecting. So what's going to happen is they're going to come and apply under their parent. They don't have to prove a disability anymore because that's already approved, but they're going to apply under the parent, and they're going to get that Social Security under their parent if they can get more, which chances are they probably will get more under their parent than they could under their own. So then we're going to switch it from their own so SSDI to SSDI under their parent.
Okay, so 2 last questions, then we'll wrap up. We've gone over, but we definitely really do try to answer your questions. I have a quick question from a woman. If I'm a green card holder, can I apply for Social Security for my daughter?
You're probably talking about SSI, not Social Security. Remember, your daughter cannot get Social Security unless you or your spouse is getting Social Security, or your spouse is deceased and had enough work credits. That's the Social Security. Yes, she can get Social Security under her dad if he passed away, or if he or you, meaning the mom, is getting Social Security, disability, or retirement. Okay, for SSI, since the mom is a green card holder, depends on where was the child born. If the child was born in the US, they're automatically US citizen. There's no work requirement. The child only has a green card for SSI. The parents, between the two of them, have to have worked 10 years. So if mom worked 3 years and dad worked 7, that's okay. That meets the 10-year requirement. The child can apply for SSI as a resident. That's okay. But otherwise, the if it's a minor child, the parents need to have, between the two of them, have to have worked, or if it's a single parent, just one parent needs to have worked 10 years in the US until the child becomes a citizen. Once there's a citizen, then there's no work requirement by the parents. They don't have, we're not looking at how many years the parents work. So if they are a citizen, there's no work requirement under SSI.
Okay, so if there's no mortgage, is there any need to decide what renting a room at fair market value is when beginning an SSI?
Well, no, if they can meet between utilities and food, if they can meet their share of expenses, you don't have to go into that other rental, that boarding agreement thing. No, and then you don't have to count what you're taking from their SSI check as income to you, because they're still a member of your household. If you come up with the boarding thing, then you're saying that they're not a member of your household technically, and then there's, then that's supposed to be reported to IRS as income.
Right. So it's basically a difference. If you're charging rent, then you need to report that on your tax return as the parent. And if you're charging the fair share, then that wouldn't have to be reported.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then when you say charging rent, you could say, meaning that they're paying, they're staying, so they're paying their share of the household expenses. That's right. That would not need to be reported. But if you're saying it's a room and board situation, then you're saying that it's an independent household. That room there as though it was its own apartment. And then in that case, that income would have to be reported by the parent on their tax returns.
Okay, I'm going to just take this last question here, and then we will close up, and we will send you guys the slide and the presentation. Sorry for the earlier technical difficulties. So if basically for SSDI, can you talk about the number of credits to be eligible for Medicare? And if there's any kind of a fewer credit program or anything like that, just clarify.
If you're eligible for SSDI, you're going to get the Medicare. Okay. So now, to get your own SSDI, 6 credits if you're under 24. Between 6, let me see. I don't have it directly in my head, but again, you look at the website and it'll tell you between ages 24 and 30, it's like, I think you need credits for half the number of years between your birthday and wait a minute, between 24 and what your birthday is, your age, if you're under 31 years old. If you're over 31 years old, it's in the last 10 years before you became disabled, you need at least 5 years of work or 20 credits. So under 24, 6 credits. The most credits you can get per year is 4, okay? So that would be basically 1.5 years of work, or maybe 2 years, depending on how much money you earn each year. So, but between 25 and 30, then I think it's half the number of years between 24 and what the age of the person is. So they would, to determine how many credits they need. And then from 31 on, it's at least 5 years in the last 10 years before you became disabled. So if I became disabled in 2020, between 2010 and 2020, last 10 years, I would need at least 5 years of work in that 10-year period, or 20 credits. out of the maximum 40.
In that example, let's talk about just for a moment for an adult that becomes disabled. So let's say the adult has the 10 years working, the 40 quarters, they have the 10 years working. And then let's say they have a special needs child and they go home. They stop working to care for their special needs child, but they already had their 40 quarters or 10 years prior, but they haven't worked in the last 10 years and they become disabled. How would that work? Would those 40 quarters count for them, or would they not?
They're going to count eventually, but because they became disabled now and in the last 10 years, they don't have at least 5 years of work, they're going to be denied on technical grounds. So those 40 will count eventually when they become of retirement age, which the minimum age is 62, but it's not going to count for disability purposes because they became disabled way after they stopped work. So that's not going to be, it's not. Now, if they had become disabled 2 or 3 years after stopping work, that would have been different.
Gotcha. Well, Andy, as always, you are always wonderful and you just provide such a wealth of information. And I really appreciate your time and letting us go over and answering these questions today. We love Andy. Andy does a great job. And honestly, we could have a seminar every day, every month, and we're always just scratching the iceberg on this stuff. But you do a great job of bringing it together. So thank you for that. And we will be having additional presentations with Andy, sharing other topics and other things. And what I would say is, if you see that we have these out there, dial in, because I will say, we're pretty good at this, but every single time I learn something new. And I think the more you hear it, the more it sinks in, or you kind of, other people have some other experiences, we learn from that. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being a part of this. If we can be of assistance to you going forward, and we certainly hope to. And Andy, if you'd like to close out with anything, please have at it.
Just remember to go to socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov for more information. If somebody calls you on the phone and says your Social Security has been suspended, you need to give this some personal information. Do not go for that, okay? So don't go for that. If somebody calls you and they say they're from Social Security, get their name, phone number, call our 800 number to verify that that is an actual person and why they need that information, okay? So stay safe, everybody. God bless.
Thank you. You too, Andy. Take care. Bye-bye.